7 distinct islands once lay scattered across this treacherous bay, separated by malaria-ridden swamps and violent tidal currents. They were not designed to support a megacity. Today, those geographic divisions have been erased by sheer human will. Over 22 million people now stand on what was once water. This is engineering defied. To understand the sheer improbability of this metropolis, look at the ground beneath the asphalt. It is not natural earth, but a manufactured foundation created by plugging the sea with millions of tons of rock and refuse. The map of Mumbai, India is a lie told by geographers to hide the ocean's former territory. A helicopter aerial over Mumbai reveals this artificial peninsula jutting defiantly into the Arabian Sea. It is a place where land is more valuable than gold. Space here is the ultimate luxury. Yet the story of how these 7 islets became a monolithic powerhouse is not just about moving dirt, but about the violent collision of empires, economics, and tides. Long before the first British surveyor set up his tripod, the archipelago was the domain of the coolies. These indigenous fisherfolk navigated the creeks of Colaba, Worli, and Mazagaon in hand-hewn boats. They worshipped Mumbai, the goddess who would eventually lend her name to the modern city. Their settlements were modest, bamboo-framed villages perched on the few rocky outcrops safe from the high tide. The Portuguese arrived in the 16th century, seeing only a strategic harbor rather than a settlement, and named it Dabbawala or Good Bay. They built forts and churches but left the deadly swamps largely untouched. The islands remained a fever-ridden backwater. Then came a royal wedding that changed history. In 1661, the Portuguese Princess Catherine of Braganza married King Charles II of England, and these 7 muddy islands were handed over as part of her dowry. The British Crown, unimpressed by the mosquito-infested gift, leased it to the East India Company for a measly £10 of gold per year. It was a bargain. The true sculpting of the city began not with a blueprint, but with an act of rebellion against nature. By the mid-18th century, the separate islands were proving impossible to administer. At low tide, one could walk between them across perilous mudflats, but high tide severed all communication. Governor William Hornby, ignoring orders from his superiors to curb spending, initiated the Hornby Vellard project in 1782. This was the first great engineering intervention. His plan was to seal the Great Breach at Worli, a gap that allowed the sea to flood the low-lying flats during storms. Workers hauled massive boulders by hand. They constructed a causeway that acted as a dam, trapping the sea out and allowing the land behind it to dry. This single embankment fused the islands of Worli and Bombay, changing the coastline forever. It was unauthorized. Hornby was recalled, but the wall remained. Without this wall, the modern city of Mumbai would simply not exist. As the 19th century dawned, the reclamation fever took hold, accelerating with a ferocity that reshaped the horizon. The causeways multiplied, linking Mahim to Sion and Colaba to the center. But it was a distant war that turned this reclamation project into a global financial center. The American Civil War broke out in 1861, blockading the cotton ports of the American South. The textile mills of Manchester, suddenly starved of raw material, turned their desperate gaze toward India. Mumbai was the answer. The city exploded into a frenzy of white gold mania. Money poured in at rates never seen before. Merchants became tycoons overnight. To process this wealth, the city needed infrastructure that matched the grandeur of London. The crumbling walls of the old Fort District were torn down in the 1860s to make way for a new, majestic city center. Architects like F.W. Stevens were commissioned to build monuments that blended Victorian Gothic styles with Indian climatic needs. The result was the C.H. Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Terminus, formerly Victoria Terminus, a cathedral of rail that still dominates the southern skyline. Construction crews worked day and night. They adorned the station with gargoyles, stained glass, and a stone dome that echoed the palaces of Europe. It took 10 years to build. This was not just a train station. It was a declaration of permanence. Nearby, the Rajabai Clock Tower rose 280 feet into the humid air, modeled after Big Ben but built with local Kerala stone. While the elites celebrated in their Gothic palaces, the industrial engine of the city roared to life in the district of Gurgaon and Parel. Kawasji Nanabhoi Davar had established the first cotton mill in 1854, but by the late 19th century, dozens of chimney stacks belched smoke into the sky. The mills were hungry beasts. They drew hundreds of thousands of migrant workers from the rural hinterlands, creating the dense, chaotic energy that defines the city today. Housing these workers became a crisis. The solution was the chawl, multi-story tenements with shared balconies and bathrooms, packing families into single rooms. These chawls became the social crucible of the city. Here, distinct castes and communities were forced to live cheek by jowl, forging a unique, gritty cosmopolitan culture. But the hunger for land was insatiable. In the early 20th century, the Back Bay Reclamation Project was launched, one of the most ambitious and scandalous engineering feats of its time. The goal was to dredge the harbor and create an entirely new financial district from the sea. Giant dredgers pumped millions of cubic meters of silt onto the foreshore. It was a disaster of corruption and miscalculation. The dredging pipes burst, the costs tripled, and the resulting land was far less than promised. Yet from this chaotic failure rose the Art Deco district of Marine Drive. Today, a drone flying through clouds at sunset captures the Queen's Necklace, a curving promenade of streetlights that sits entirely on this reclaimed land. It is the city's breathing space. Beneath the chaotic surface, however, lies a labyrinth of hidden infrastructure that keeps the city from collapsing. The Victorian-era storm water drains and underground network of brick-arched tunnels still function today. They are vast enough to drive a jeep through. During the monsoon, when the skis dump 3 months of rain in 3 days, these drains are the only thing preventing total inundation. Yet they are constantly overwhelmed. The city is fighting a perpetual war against the water it displaced. Deep beneath the governor's estate at Raj Bhavan, a secret was discovered as recently as 2016. Behind a sealed wooden door, staff found a 150-meter-long British-era bunker with 13 rooms, formerly used to store ammunition and coordinate war efforts, forgotten for decades. The city also relies on a human infrastructure that is the envy of logistics experts worldwide. The Dabbawalas, a delivery network over 125 years old, move 200,000 lunchboxes every day with virtually zero technology. Using a complex coding system of colors and numbers painted on tiffin tins, they navigate the crushing density of the railway network. Harvard case studies have analyzed their Six Sigma precision. They are the blood cells of the city. And then there is the water itself. In the shadows of the skyscrapers lies Dobby Ghat, the world's largest open-air laundry, where thousands of washers thrash the city's linens against flogging stones. It is a visual anchor of the past. Here, the smell of bleach and soap mixes with the humid harbor air, a reminder of the manual labor that underpins the corporate towers visible in the distance. The transformation of Mumbai, India continues today with a vertical velocity that rivals any city on Earth. The textile mills that once drove the economy fell silent in the 1980s, their lands lying dormant until a real estate boom turned them into high-end residential towers and malls. The Phoenix Mills district is now a temple of consumption, where the old smokestacks have been preserved as aesthetic relics amidst luxury boutiques. But the greatest challenge remains mobility. The Mumbai local trains carry over 7.5 million passengers daily, a density known as super-dense crush load, where 16 people stand in a single square meter. To relieve this, the city is currently burrowing deep underground. The new Metro Line 3 is a $3 billion engineering marvel, tunneling through complex geology and beneath heritage buildings to connect the north and south. Simultaneously, the coastline is being rewritten once again. The Mumbai Coastal Road Project is a massive infrastructure undertaking, reclaiming another 111 hectares from the Arabian Sea to build an 8-lane freeway. Heavy machinery operators maneuver cranes on temporary islands, battling the same tides that William Hornby fought 3 centuries ago. This project involves the country's first undersea tunnel, a 2-kilometer tube bored through solid rock beneath the ocean floor. It is a gamble on the future. Critics argue it caters to cars in a city of pedestrians, while proponents see it as a necessary artery for a choking metropolis. The skyline is now a jagged graph of ambition. In whirly skyscrapers like the Palais Royal pierce the clouds, standing over 300 meters tall, casting long shadows over the fishing villages that still cling to the shoreline. The contrast is visceral. A pedestrian crossing a busy intersection in Bandra sees a Ferrari idling next to a hand-pulled cart. The slum of Dharavi, often mischaracterized as merely a place of poverty, is actually an economic engine with an annual turnover of over $1 billion, housing thousands of small-scale industries recycling plastic and leather. It sits on prime land, the subject of a controversial redevelopment plan that threatens to displace the very community that built it. This tension between the planned and the organic is the city's heartbeat. As the sun sets over the Arabian Sea, the golden hour drone shots reveal a city that defies logic. It is a place where colonial Gothic spires reflect in the glass facades of modern fintech towers. It is a city that should not exist, built on islands that are no longer islands, fighting a sea that constantly tries to reclaim its territory. The history of Mumbai is not just about the buildings, it is about the audacity to exist. Every square inch of dry land here is a victory against the ocean. As climate change raises sea levels, the city faces its greatest existential threat since its founding. The walls built by Hornby held back the tide for 2 centuries, but the next century will demand a new kind of engineering. In the end, this peninsula is a testament to human resilience in its rawest form. It is a machine for living, constructed from mud, rock, and ambition. The fishermen still cast their nets in the shadow of the Trans-Harbor Link, and the trains still run on time, carrying the dreamers who flock here by the thousands every day. This is the maximum city. It never stops building, it never stops reclaiming.